Chapter 7. Now we will look at some common and not so common attacks and threats. Now, some of the most common attacks are listed in the Word document attached to this lecture. You can see there are 11 very common threats, which are viruses, malware, SQL injection attack, man-in-the-middle, password attacks, brute force attack, spyware and keyloggers, cross-site scripting, phishing attacks, DDoS, and vishing attacks. Now, the examples of some of the biggest cybersecurity attacks, we will first look at these. There have been many notable cyber attacks throughout history, but here are some of the biggest and most damaging ones. Equifax in 2017. Equifax is a credit reporting agency. They suffered a massive data breach that exposed the personal information of over 147 billion people, including names, social security numbers, birth dates, and even more. In 2013 and 2014, Yahoo suffered multiple data breaches that compromised the personal information of all of its 3 billion user accounts, including names, email addresses, birth dates, and security questions and answers. Target is a large brand in USA. In 2013, they experienced a data breach that exposed the personal and financial information of over 110 million customers, including credit and debit card numbers, names, addresses, and telephone numbers. Sony is a very large organization. In 2014, they experienced a cyber attack that resulted in the theft and release of a large amount of confidential and sensitive data, including email addresses, employee data, financial information, and unreleased movies. WannaCry in 2017. WannaCry ransomware spread rapidly across the globe, infecting hundreds of thousands of computers in over 150 countries and causing significant disruptions to critical infrastructure, including healthcare, transportation, and telecommunications. Also in 2017, NotPetya, a destructive malware attack, caused significant damage to numerous companies, particularly in the Ukraine, where it disrupted critical infrastructure, including banks, energy companies, and transportation systems. More recently, in 2020, a massive cyber attack on SolarWinds, who are a network management software company, resulted in the compromise of numerous government and private sector organizations, including several US government agencies. These are just a few examples of some of the biggest cybersecurity attacks in recent history. It is important to note that as technology evolves, so do threats and risks associated with it, and it's crucial for individuals and organizations to take proactive measures to protect themselves from potential cyber threats. There are several common cyber threats that individuals and organizations should be aware of. These common threats include phishing. Phishing is a technique used by cyber criminals to trick individuals into sensitive information, such as login credentials, social security numbers, or credit card information. This is usually done through a fake email or a website that looks legitimate. Malware. Malware is any software designed to damage or exploit computer systems. It can come in various forms such as viruses, worms, trojans, and spyware. Malware can be used to steal sensitive information, take control of systems, or cause damage to devices. Ransomware. Ransomware is a type of malware that encrypts a victim's files and demands a ransom payment in exchange for the decryption key. This is particularly insidious type of attack, as it can be difficult to recover data without paying a ransom. DDoS attacks, also known as distributed denial of service. These attacks are used to overload a website or network with traffic, using it to become unavailable to users. DDoS attacks are often carried out using botnets, which are a network of infected devices that are controlled by a hacker. Man-in-the-middle attack, MITM. This attack occurs when a cybercriminal intercepts communication between two parties in order to eavesdrop or manipulate the conversation. This can be done through compromised Wi-Fi networks, phishing, or other means. Password attacks. These are used to gain unauthorized access to systems or accounts by guessing or stealing passwords. This can be done through brute force attacks, where the attacker tries a large number of passwords, or through phishing attacks, where the attacker tricks the user into revealing their password. Social engineering. Social engineering is a technique used to manipulate people into revealing sensitive information or performing actions that are not in their best interest. This can be done through phishing, pretexting, baiting, or other methods. Insider threats. An insider threat occurs when someone with unauthorized access to a system or network intentionally or accidentally causes harm. This can be done through stealing data, introducing malware, or causing system failures. These are just a few examples of many cyber threats that exist today. It is important to stay vigilant and take steps to protect yourself and your organization from these and other potential attacks. Next, we look at a threat actors overview. Threat actors refer to individuals or groups who engage in activities that pose a potential threat to the security or integrity of an organization or a system. Threat actors can be categorized based on their motivation, expertise, and objectives. Some common types of threat actors include hackers, individuals or groups who use technical expertise to gain unauthorized access to systems, networks, or data. Cybercriminals, individuals or groups who engage in illegal activities online, such as stealing personal or financial information, conducting fraud, or distributing malware. Next, state-sponsored actors, individuals or groups who are sponsored by a nation-state to conduct espionage or cyber attacks against foreign governments, organizations, or individuals. Next, insiders. These are employees or contractors who have authorized access to systems or data but misuse their access for personal gain or to cause harm. Activists. These are individuals or groups who use cyber attacks as a means to advance a political or social cause. It is important for organizations to be aware of these different types of threat actors and their tactics, as this can help them develop effective security strategies and mitigate potential risks. Next, we look at ethical hacking. Ethical hacking, also known as white hat hacking, is a practice of using hacking techniques to identify and fix security vulnerabilities in computer systems, networks, and applications. Ethical hackers use the same tools and methods as malicious hackers, but they do so with the explicit permission of the system owner and with the goal of improving security rather than causing harm. The purpose of ethical hacking is to identify weaknesses in security systems before the malicious hackers can exploit them. Ethical hackers use various techniques such as vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, and social engineering to uncover vulnerabilities in computer systems and networks. They then report their findings to the system owners so that the vulnerabilities can be fixed so they are not exploited by malicious actors. Ethical hacking is an important practice in today's digital world because of the increasing number of cyber attacks and the damage they can cause. By identifying and fixing vulnerabilities before they are exploited by malicious actors, ethical hackers can help prevent data breaches, theft of sensitive information, and other types of cyber attacks. Now we look at a very long list of different attacks and threats that may occur. 6.1 ransomware. Ransomware is a type of malicious software that is designed to encrypt files on a victim's computer, making them inaccessible and demanding a ransom payment in exchange for the decryption key that would allow the victim to regain access to their files. Ransomware attacks typically begin with the victim being tricked into opening a file or clicking a link in an email or on a website, which then allows the malware to infect the system. Once the malware has encrypted the victim's files, a message will appear on their screen demanding payment, often in the form of cryptocurrency in exchange for a decryption key. Ransomware attacks have become increasingly common in recent years and can have serious consequences for individuals, businesses, and organizations of all sizes. Some ransomware strains may even threaten to publicly release sensitive information if the ransomware is not paid, adding an additional layer of pressure to the victim. The best way to protect against ransomware is to ensure that your computer and software are up to date with all the latest security patches and use antivirus software, and to exercise caution when opening files and clicking on links from unknown sources. Next, we look at botnets. A botnet is a network of interconnected devices such as computers, servers, and IoT devices, which are infected with malware and controlled remotely by a malicious actor. Botnets are typically used for malicious purposes such as carrying out DDoS attacks, sending spam emails, stealing sensitive data, or distributing malware. The devices in a botnet are usually infected through malware that exploits vulnerabilities in their software or through social engineering techniques that trick users into downloading and installing malicious software. Once infected, the devices become part of the botnet and can be controlled by the bot master, who can issue commands from the entire network or to individual devices. Botnets can be difficult to detect and mitigate as they're often spread across multiple geographic locations and may use encryption to conceal their communications. However, there are a variety of techniques that can be used to identify and disrupt botnets, such as network traffic analysis, behavioral analysis, and use of antivirus software and intrusion detection systems. Next, we look at a denial of service attack. A denial of service attack is a type of cyber attack in which an attacker attempts to overwhelm a target system or a network with traffic, data, or requests to the point where the system becomes unavailable to legitimate users. The attack works by consuming the resources of the targeted system or network, such as CPU usage, bandwidth, or memory, and preventing it from serving legitimate requests. There are several different types of DOS attacks, including DDoS, which is Distributed Denial of Service Attack. In this type of attack, the attacker uses a network of compromised devices to flood the targeted system or network with traffic, making it difficult or impossible to legitimate users to access it. Next, there's an application layer attack. This type of attack attacks a specific application or service on the targeted system, overwhelming it with requests or exploiting vulnerabilities in the application to bring it down. Next, the flood attack. This type of attack floods the targeted system or network with a large amount of traffic or data, consuming its resources and making it unavailable to legitimate users. Another type of attack is called a buffer overflow attack. This type of attack exploits a vulnerability in a system or application by sending more data than it can handle, causing it to crash and become unavailable. To protect against DOS attacks, organizations can implement security measures such as firewalls, intrusion detection and prevention systems, traffic filtering, and also it's important to have an incident response plan in place to quickly identify and mitigate this attack. Next, we look at bootkit and rootkit malware. A bootkit is a type of malware that infects the boot process of the computer's operating system. It typically targets the MBR, also known as Master Boot Record, or the Unified Extensible Firm Interface, UEFI, firmware, to gain control of the system before the operating system loads. Bootkits are particularly stealthy and difficult to detect because they operate at a low level, below the operating system and many traditional security tools. Once a bootkit infects a system, it can persist even after the system is rebooted or the hard drive is reformatted. The goal of bootkit is usually to give an attacker persistent access to the infected system and to enable them to perform various malicious activities, such as stealing sensitive data, installing additional malware, or controlling the system remotely. Preventing bootkit infections typically involves using secure boot technologies, keeping firmware on operating systems up to date, and using security software that can detect and remove bootkits. Additionally, best practices such as not downloading suspicious files or opening attachments from unknown sources can help prevent bootkit infections. Next, we look at rootkit. A rootkit is a type of malicious software or code that is designed to gain privileged access to a computer system or network without being detected. It is usually installed by an attacker who wants to gain unauthorized access to a system or network for malicious purposes, such as stealing sensitive information, spying on users, or controlling the system remotely. Rootkits are often designed to hide their presence from the operating system and other security software by altering system files, registry entries, and other critical components of the system. This makes them difficult to detect and remove, and they can remain hidden for extended periods of time, allowing the attacker to maintain access and control over the system. There are different types of rootkits, including kernel-level rootkits, which operate at the level of the operating system kernel, and user-level rootkits, which operate at the user level of the operating system, Some rootkits are also able to hide their presence in memory and can modify their behavior dynamically to avoid detection. Rootkits can be installed through a variety of methods, including exploiting vulnerabilities in software or hardware, tricking users into downloading and installing them, or using social engineering techniques to gain access to the system. Protecting your system from rootkits requires a combination of good security practices, such as keeping your software and operating system up to date, using anti-malware software, and being cautious when downloading and installing software from unknown sources. Next, we look at email spoofing. Email spoofing is a technique used by spammers or scammers to forge the sender's email address in an email message in order to deceive the recipient into believing that the email is coming from a trusted source. This is done by modifying the email header information, which contains the sender's email address and other details about the message. Spoofed emails can also be used for various purposes, such as phishing attacks, spamming, or spreading malware. For example, a phishing email may be designed as a legitimate email from a bank or other financial institution, and the recipient may be asked to click on a link to provide sensitive information, such as their login credentials or credit card details. To prevent email spoofing, email service providers and organizations use various techniques such as SPF, Sender Policy Framework, DKIM, Domain Keys Identified Mail, and DMARC, Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting and Conformance. That's DMARC. These technologies help to verify the authenticity of the sender's email address and reduce the risk of spoofed emails. Additionally, users can also take precautions such as avoiding opening suspicious emails, checking the sender's email address, and not clicking on links and downloading attachments from unknown sources. Next, section 7.6, email bombing or flooding. Email bombing is also known as email flooding, which is a form of cyber attack which a large number of emails are sent to a particular email address or domain, with the intention of overwhelming the recipient's inbox or potentially causing a denial of service attack. The email address These emails may contain large attachments, repetitive content, or be sent at a high frequency. This can result in recipients' email server becoming overloaded and unable to process legitimate email traffic, causing a disruption to their normal operations. Email bombing is considered a malicious activity and is illegal in most countries. It can cause significant harm to businesses and individuals, including loss of productivity, damage to reputation, and financial losses. To protect against email bombing, individuals and organizations should implement measures such as using spam filters, limiting the number of messages that can be received from a particular sender, and monitoring email traffic for unusual activity. It is important to report any instances of email bombing to relevant authorities. Next, section 7.7, a man-in-the-middle attack, which is a very common type of attack. A man-in-the-middle attack, MITM, is a type of cyber attack where the attacker intercepts communication between two parties and injects themselves into the conversation without either party knowing. The attacker can then eavesdrop on or modify the communication, potentially stealing sensitive information such as passwords or financial data. MITM attacks can be carried out through various methods, including spoofing, where the attacker creates a fake website or network to intercept the communication. ARP spoofing. The attacker spoofs the ARP address, which is Address Resolution Protocol, to intercept communication between two devices on the local network. DNS spoofing. The attacker spoofs the DNS, domain name system, to redirect the victim to a fake website. SSL stripping. The attacker downgrades the secure communication to an unencrypted one, allowing them to intercept and read the communication. To prevent MITM attacks, it is important to use secure communication protocols such as HTTPS when web browsing, and to ensure that software systems are kept up to date with the latest security patches. It is also important to be cautious when connecting to public Wi-Fi networks, as these are often unsecured and can be used by attackers to carry out these MITM man-in-the-middle attacks. Now we look at section 7.8, a backdoor threat. In computer security, a backdoor is a hidden method of bypassing normal authentication or security controls in a computer system, software application, or network. Backdoors can be intentionally created by software developers or hackers to provide access to a system or network without going through the normal authentication process. Backdoors can also be used to gain access to a system after the password has been changed, or to maintain access to a system after the exploit has been discovered and patched. Backdoors can take many forms, including hidden user accounts, secret commands or key combinations, and hidden network protocols. They can be difficult to detect and can remain hidden for extended periods of time, making them a serious threat to the security of computer systems and networks. Preventing backdoors includes a multi-layered approach to security, including strong access controls, regular software updates and patching, and ongoing monitoring for suspicious activity. Organizations should educate their users on best practices for computer security, such as creating strong passwords and avoiding suspicious emails or links. Now we look at section 7.9, Advanced Persistent Threats, also known as APTs. An APT refers to an ongoing and targeted cybersecurity attack that is conducted by an adversary who is highly skilled and well-resourced. These types of threats are characterized by their stealthy and continuous nature, as the attacker often uses sophisticated techniques to evade detection and maintain access to the targeted system or network over an extended period of time. Persistent threats can take many forms, including malware infections, phishing attacks, and social engineering tactics. The attackers behind the persistent threats are often motivated by financial gain, intellectual property theft, or political espionage, and they may target a wide range of organizations, from government agencies and financial organizations to healthcare providers and educational institutions. To defend against persistent threats, organizations must implement robust cybersecurity measures, such as continuous monitoring, threat hunting, and incident response plans. They also must educate employees on the importance of cybersecurity hygiene and awareness to prevent social engineering attacks such as phishing. Finally, they must stay up to date with the latest threat intelligence and security technologies to keep pace with the ever-evolving threat landscape. Next, section 7.10. ARP attack, ARP attack. An ARP attack, also known as ARP spoofing or ARP poisoning, is a type of cyber attack where an attacker sends falsified address resolution protocol ARP messages over a local area network, LAN. The type of ARP attack is to associate the attacker's MAC address with the IP address of another device on the network, such as the default gateway, so that all traffic intended for that IP address is redirected to the attacker's machine. This can also allow the attacker to intercept and read sensitive information, modify network traffic, or even launch further attacks. ARP attacks can be prevented through the use of various security measures such as implementing network segmentation, using network intrusion detection systems, and implementing secure ARP protocols. Additionally, using strong encryption and secure communication protocols can help to prevent attackers from intercepting and reading network traffic. Now we look at section 7.11, a honeypot. This is a security mechanism used to detect, deflect, and counteract attempts to unauthorized use of information systems. It involves setting up a network or system with vulnerabilities intentionally in order to attract and monitor cyber attackers or malicious software, to gain insights into their methods and motives. Honeypots can be classified into two types: production honeypots and research honeypots. Production honeypots are designed to protect production networks and systems by diverting attackers away from critical resources. Research honeypots, on the other hand, are used for academic and research purposes and set up to gather data on attackers' techniques, tactics, and motives. Honeypots can be used as part of a broader cybersecurity strategy to gather intelligence about potential cyber threats, to improve incident response capabilities, and to provide early warnings of attacks. However, honeypots can also pose security risks if they're not properly secured, monitored, and maintained, and can be used as a vector for attackers to gain access to production networks. Next, we look at spear phishing, section 7.12. Spear phishing is a type of cyber attack that targets specific individuals or organizations, usually through email or other forms of electronic communication. Unlike regular phishing attacks that are more generic and widespread, spear phishing attacks are highly targeted and personalized. The attackers conduct extensive research on their intended victims to gather information that can be used to make the phishing attempts more convincing and increase the chances of success. In a spear phishing attack, the attacker typically poses as a trusted individual or entity, such as a colleague, manager, or well-known organization, to trick the recipient into revealing sensitive information or taking a particular action. The messages or communications used in spear phishing attacks are carefully crafted to appear legitimate and often employ social engineering techniques to manipulate the recipient's emotions or sense of urgency. Spear phishing attacks can be highly effective because they exploit the trust and familiarity that individuals have their colleagues or organizations. The attackers may use information gathered from public sources, social media, or previous data breaches to customize their messages and make them more convincing. By tricking victims into providing sensitive information like passwords, credit cards, or account credentials, attackers can gain unauthorized access to systems, steal sensitive data, or carry out other malicious activities. To protect yourself from spear phishing attacks, it's important to be cautious and vigilant when handling emails or other electronic communications. Some of the recommended practices include: number 1, verify the sender's identity. Pay attention to the sender's email address and any suspicious or unusual aspects of the email message. If you're unsure about the authenticity of an email, contact the supposed sender through a different communication channel to confirm its legitimacy. Be cautious of unexpected or urgent requests. Spear phishing attacks often create a sense of urgency or exploit emotional triggers to prompt immediate action. Take a moment to verify the request independently before responding or providing any sensitive information. Number 3, think before clicking. Avoid clicking on links or downloading attachments from suspicious or unverified sources. Hover over the links to see if the actual destination URL before clicking, and be aware of shortened URLs or misleading hyperlinks. Number 4, keep software up to date. Regularly update your operating system, antivirus software, web browsers, and any other applications to ensure you have the latest security patches and protection against known vulnerabilities. 5, be cautious with personal information online. Limit the amount of personal information you share publicly on social media platforms and other online forums. The less information available to attackers, the harder it is for them to personalize your spear phishing attempts. 6, educate yourself and stay informed. Stay updated with the latest phishing techniques and security best practices. Organizations often provide awareness training to help their employees recognize and respond to phishing attempts effectively. By following these practices and maintaining a healthy skepticism towards unsolicited or suspicious communications, you can reduce the risk of falling to spear phishing attacks. Now we look at smishing, S-M-I-S-H-I-N-G, section 7.13. Smishing is a form of phishing text that is carried out through text messages, SMS, or other messaging platforms such as WhatsApp or Viber. It is a type of social engineering attack where an attacker tries to trick individuals into providing sensitive information or performing certain actions by sending fraudulent messages. The term smishing is a combination of SMS and phishing. Like traditional phishing, smishing attempts to deceive victims by posing as a legitimate entity such as a bank, government agency, or service provider. The messages often contain urgent requests or alarming statements to create a sense of urgency and panic, pushing the recipient to respond quickly without thinking. Next, we look at pharming, P-H-A-R-M-I-N-G, section 7.14. Pharming is known as phishing with a twist. It is a type of cyber attack that involves the redirection of website traffic to a fraudulent website without the user's knowledge or consent. Unlike traditional phishing, which relies on tricking users into visiting fake websites by clicking malicious links, Farming manipulates the DNS, domain name system, or other network-level vulnerabilities to redirect users to malicious websites. Next, section 7.15, Scareware. Scareware refers to a type of malicious software or deceptive tactics used by cybercriminals to scare or deceive users into taking certain actions that benefit the attacker. The primary goal of scareware is to trick users into believing that their computer is infected by malware and other security threats, then convincing them to purchase fake or unnecessary software services. Scareware typically operates through various methods such as pop-up ads, fake antivirus alerts, and aggressive marketing techniques. Next, vishing, V-I-S-H-I-N-G, section 7.16. Vishing is known as voice phishing. It's a type of social engineering attack that uses voice communication, typically over a phone, to deceive individuals into providing sensitive information or performing certain actions. It's a play on the terms voice and phishing, called vishing, which refers to similar type of attack conducted through email or other communication. In a vishing attack, the attacker typically poses as a legitimate entity such as bank representative, a government agency official, or tech support personnel. They use various techniques to gain the trust of the target and convince them to disclose sensitive information like credit card details, social security numbers, login credentials, or other personal and financial details. Next, we look at data destruction, 7.17. Data destruction attacks refer to malicious activities aimed at destroying or rendering data inaccessible, often with the intention of causing harm or disruption. These attacks can have serious consequences such as loss of valuable information, financial damage, or disruption to critical services. Here are some of the common types of data destruction attacks. Ransomware. It's a type of malware that encrypts files on a victim's computer or network, rendering them inaccessible. Attackers then demand a ransom payment in exchange for the decryption key. Also, other parts of data destruction that we've covered already is DDoS attacks. Data wiping. In this type of attack, the attacker gains unauthorized access to a system or network and deliberately deletes or wipes data of the system, rendering it irrecoverable. Physical destruction. Data destruction attacks can also occur through physical means, where the attacker physically damages or destroys the storage devices containing the data. For example, an attacker may physically damage servers, hard drives, or other storage media to render the data inaccessible. Insider threats. Insider threats refer to attacks that originate from within the organization. In some cases, employees or insiders with authorized access may intentionally delete or corrupt data. Now we look at buffer overflow attacks, section 7.18. A buffer flow attack is a type of security vulnerability that occurs when the program tries to store more data in a buffer, which is a temporary storage area that it can handle. This extra data can overflow into adjacent memory locations, corrupting and overwriting the contents of these locations. By carefully crafting the input, an attacker can take advantage of this vulnerability to execute arbitrary code or gain unauthorized access to the system. Now here is a step-by-step explanation of how a buffer overflow attack typically works. First of all, buffer allocation. Well, the vulnerable program allocates a fixed size buffer in memory to store the data. Next, you've got insufficient bounds checking. The program does not perform adequate bounds checking on the data being input. It fails to verify that the input data will fit into the allocated buffer. Next, you have input data flow, overwriting memory, exploiting control flow, and execution of malicious code. Buffer overflow attacks can be highly dangerous and a common target for attackers. To mitigate the risk of such attacks, software developers should implement secure coding practices, including proper input validation, bounds checking, and using secure programming libraries and techniques. Additionally, operating system vendors and security researchers work to identify and patch vulnerabilities to prevent buffer overflow attacks. Regularly updating software and systems can help prevent against known vulnerabilities. Now we look at data intercepting and session hijacking, section 7.19. Interception of data refers to the act of capturing or acquiring digital information during its transmission or storage. This interception can occur through various means, including electronic surveillance, hacking, or unauthorized access to network or devices. The purpose of data interception can range from monitoring communications for legitimate purposes to law enforcement or intelligence gathering to malicious activities such as identity theft or industrial espionage. There are different methods and techniques used to intercept data, such as network sniffing. Attackers can use tools or software to monitor network traffic and capture data packets. Man-in-the-middle attacks, MITM, we've covered that already. Phishing, malware, and data breaches. Encryption, secure protocols, firewalls, intrusion detection systems, strong authentication, regular updates and patches. Session hijacking is also known as session stealing or session sidejacking. This refers to unauthorized takeover of a user's active session on a computer system or web application. There are various methods that attackers can employ to hijack sessions: packet sniffing, session sidejacking, cross-site scripting, session fixation. Once an attacker successfully hijacks a session, they can perform various malicious activities, such as accessing sensitive information, manipulating user data, conducting fraudulent transactions, or even escalating their privileges within the system. To protect against session hijacking, it's essential to implement secure practices, such as using HTTPS to prevent packet sniffing attacks. Other ways you can protect users from this type of attack is educate users about risks of using public Wi-Fi networks and encourage the use of VPNs. By adopting these measures, both web application developers and users can reduce the risk of session hijacking and enhance the security of their online sessions. Now we look at malformed URL attacks. 7.20. A malformed URL attack, also known as URL injection attack or URL-based attack, is a type of security or vulnerability where attacker manipulates a URL to exploit a vulnerability in a web application or system. By crafting a malicious URL, also known as a web address, the attacker aims to deceive the application or the system into performing unintended actions or revealing sensitive information. Here are a few examples of common malformed URL attacks. First of all, you've got path traversal. The attacker manipulates the URL to traverse directories and access files or directories outside of the intended scope. For example, they may append 2 dots before the backslash sequences to the URL to move up the directory hierarchy. Directory listing. If a web server is not properly configured, an attacker can force the server to display a directory listing instead of the intended web page by manipulating the URL. This can expose sensitive files and directories to unauthorized access. SQL injection. By injecting SQL statements into the URL parameters, an attacker can manipulate the underlying database of a web application. This can allow them to extract or modify data or even execute arbitrary commands. Next, cross-site scripting. Attackers can inject malicious scripts into URLs that are displayed on a website. When a user clicks on a manipulated URL, the script is executed in their browser, allowing the attacker to steal sensitive information or perform actions on the user's behalf. Command injection. In some cases, a web application might allow certain commands to be executed on the server through that URL. An attacker can exploit this by injecting additional commands into the URL, potentially gaining unauthorized access to the server or performing malicious actions. Preventing malformed URL attacks typically involves implementing proper input validation and sanitization techniques within the web application. Here are a few preventative measures for URL attacks. Input validation. Validate all and sanitize all user-supplied input, including URL parameters, before using them in any application logic or database queries. This helps to prevent unintended interpretation of malicious input. Whitelisting. Implement a strict whitelist of allowable characters and patterns for URL parameters. URL encoding. Properly encode and decode URL parameters. Server configuration. Configure web servers to display directory listing and restrict access to sensitive files and directories. Security testing. Regularly conduct security assessments, including vulnerability scanning and penetration testing. It is important to stay vigilant and keep your web applications and systems updated with the latest security patches to mitigate the risk of malformed URL attacks and other security vulnerabilities. Now we look at phishing or QR code attacks. 7.2.1. QR code phishing is a type of cyber attack where malicious QR codes are used to deceive individuals into visiting fraudulent websites or downloading malicious attacks. Next, hot mic attacks. 7.22. Here are some key points about hot mic attacks. A hot mic refers to a microphone that is accidentally left on and transmitting audio without the speaker's knowledge. This makes it vulnerable to attack. Common targets include smartphones, laptops, smart speakers, and other IoT devices with microphones. Even virtual assistants like Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant could be vulnerable. Next, 7.23. Supply chain attacks. A supply chain attack targets an organization or hardware product through its supply chain dependencies and third-party elements. Attackers may compromise a supplier, vendor, or partner network and plant malware, a backdoor, or other vulnerability that gives them access to on the supply chain. Major supply chain attacks have targeted SolarWinds, Kaseya, Codecov, and open source repositories like NPM or PyY. Next, we look at AI-powered cyber attacks, which is very prevalent nowadays. AI is becoming very, very popular types of attacks. This is section 7.24. Here are some of the key points about AI-powered cyber attacks. AI can be used by attackers to automate, optimize, and scale cyber attacks more effectively. AI techniques such as machine learning allow attackers to analyze volumes of data, adapt to defenses, evade detection, and exploit vulnerabilities in software and networks. Examples include using AI for smarter spear phishing, credential stuffing, generating disinformation, finding bugs in code, and automating different attack vectors. Next, we look at section 7.25, keyloggers. A keylogger is a type of surveillance technology used to monitor and record the keystroke typed by a specific computer. Here are some key details about keyloggers. They record all keyboard input, including passwords, emails, messages, and anything else typed by that user. Keyloggers save this data locally or transmit it covertly to a remote receiver. They are used both by cyber criminals for stealing sensitive data, as well as lawfully to monitor employees or minor children. Keyloggers can be software installed on a computer, a physical device plugged in between the computer and the keyboard, or a script run remotely. Signs of a possible keylogger include keyboard malfunctions, unusual activity lights, strange connections, and performance issues. Overall, keyloggers represent a powerful surveillance threat that users should be knowledgeable about in order to detect and mitigate. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good day.